More UFO secrets? According to investigative journalist Ross Coulthart, 3 sources have told him that there was an undisclosed encounter over the Arctic Circle on February 1st, 2023, with NORAD organizing fighter jets being sent to take the object down, 3 days before the Chinese spy balloon was shot down in U.S. airspace. Let's watch.
3 sources tell me there was an earlier, publicly undisclosed incident over the Arctic Circle on the 1st of February, 3 days before the Chinese balloon shoot-down. These defence and intelligence sources revealing to News Nation 8 or 9 UAPs were detected over the Arctic Circle and that fighter jets were sent up in what was an unsuccessful attempt to intercept them. Former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defence Christopher Mellon has independently confirmed the same story.
Fighter jets were deployed from NORAD to engage with those objects and that they were seen to manoeuvre away, apparently at high speed. Have you heard those allegations? I've heard it now from 3 different people.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing, and from an individual who would have plausible reason to know. But this really speaks to a much larger issue, which is the lack of information from the Air Force about UAP generally.
Let's hear some more on this same incident.
Did they find the object, the pieces of the object they shot down?
No, ma'am, they did not. In fact, it's a continuing mystery. 6 months on, the public's been told nothing. We've been told that they didn't find anything, even though the New York Times and other institutions were reporting at the time that the sea ice was frozen and that it was quite clear, there was very clear open conditions that day. The conditions were perfect for recovery. And moreover, it was reported in media that there was something anomalous about the Alaska object in particular. This is an ongoing mystery, Elizabeth. We just don't know, and I think the public's got a right to know what happened, and the Pentagon has indicated it's soon about to start releasing some of the shoot-down vision.
NORAD has denied the incident, saying the jets were on a training operation. So I don't know what to make of this, right? It could be the spy balloon. If it was the spy balloon, why did they ignore it? If they were only going to shoot it down later, why would they let it fly over the United States before they shot it down? Seems like because it was anomalous, it wasn't the balloon. I don't know if I trust NORAD. If you have children at home and you're watching or listening, pause here, but NORAD does this thing every Christmas where they're like, we have GPS on Santa Claus and we're tracking Santa Claus and this is where he is. He's coming to your house. What a lie. That was a lie. And you tricked me and I'm upset about that, NORAD. I don't buy it. How can Santa be real but aliens aren't? Bad organization. Don't like them.
I think the problem we have now is because the Department of Defense and other government intelligence sources have been found to be incredibly dishonest about UAPs in the past and have tried to discredit the sources who are talking about it, that no one is going to believe them now when there is a legitimate training exercise and that is a legitimate excuse for what happened. So it very well could be that this was just a training exercise, as they say, but I am not inclined to believe them now at this point because they have lost so much trust from the American public because of the lies that they've told. So I don't know how much stock I put into this particular reporting. I'd be curious to hear the sources characterized more. He said 3 people, 3 sources, but didn't go much beyond that in terms of telling us who they are and how they would have access to this information. So I would have liked to see a little bit more detail in that reporting on air that we heard before I make any judgments on the accuracy of the information. But the fact that there were 2 journalists who independently confirmed this incident occurred was interesting to me.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. The protection of sources in the case of UAP reporting has become really fascinating because you have all of these documentaries on the History Channel where they interview people who have been career folks working in the Defense Department or what have you that have all of these things to say. But what's so unique about the state we're in right now is you have people that seemingly are currently serving in office. They're either, in the State Department, and they're an employee of the State Department, they're in NORAD, and they're speaking to reporters, which I think is really interesting. But you have Tim Burchett, an elected official, going in a skiff and finding out basically nothing at all. It sounds to me like the if you call them whistleblowers or the sources for a lot of David Grush's reporting, I really believe them. You have independent reporters confirming with the sources as well and other sources the statements. And so now we're in a place where the public knows it's true, and the Defense Department brings Burchett in a skiff essentially to waste everyone's time and get our hopes up. I think just having the incident undisclosed initially means that there was something going on. You're absolutely right. That sows mistrust. We know something was going on. Why didn't you tell us about it initially? Because it could have been a training exercise. And if it was a training exercise, just say it. Because it sounds like the only reason someone would speak out about it is because it was unusual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's right. And in terms of the protection of sources, it's also important to remember that these people have been subject to really quite harsh attacks on their character and questioning even their sanity. There was that article with leaks to the Intercept against David Grush, where he was basically accused of being mentally unstable, mentally unwell, of being an alcoholic, perhaps a domestic abuser, and used incidents from his past as a way to discredit him and what he's saying now about UFOs and UAPs. And that's the level that the government is willing to stoop to keep this information under wraps. And we know that David Grush, after he testified to Congress in their now infamous UFO hearing, he said that he would show information because most of his sources are secondhand, I believe. He said that he would actually give the names of these people who were speaking to him about this phenomena to members of Congress who had the authorization, and also that he would show them in the skiff some of these materials. And then the skiff that Tim Burchett went into, as you said, didn't really garner much of anything. And apparently the Congress people who are interested in following up on David Grush's claims don't have the appropriate clearance to actually access some of the information that he wants to provide to them. So they're stuck in this sort of holding pattern right now where they want more information. David Grush wants to provide it. And yet there's this security obstacle to being able to actually get it to them. And it's really a shame how I think the government does a lot of overclassification of materials that are of public interest intentionally so that people can't, not even just the American public, but the fact that a congressperson couldn't access it is telling.
Insane. I think that, the famous meme of the guy with the messed up hair and the History Channel logo, and it says aliens.
Heck yeah.
My theory is that that was a psyop. It was a psyop by the people protecting the information about UAPs.
Yeah.
And they spread this everywhere so that you wouldn't watch the History Channel at 2 a.m. And now, if you believe those guys, they were crazy, and you must be crazy for believing them because they have weird, funky hair and they talk about aliens. They had to discredit Grush because members of Congress wanted to have him on and talk to him. And he sounds very credible.
Right.
He doesn't seem like, ooh, aliens, conspiracy guy. No, he sounds credible, and members of Congress have taken interest in him, so they had to find something else. Obviously, there was a tip that he had this, history of mental health problems, which were not severe. He was very clearly, struggling with some depression, which is kind of common. And so for the Intercept to take that and report on it, it just feels wrong. And I think about the tension between the bureaucracy and elected members of Congress. I always thought, or maybe I hoped, that the issue that would bring things to a head would be funding the federal government. That when Congress votes on a budget and votes to spend dollars, that if there's a tension between them and the Federal Reserve wanting to maintain the debt ceiling, and you have the Biden administration or whoever's president, maybe it's Trump, they say, no, you have to issue the dollars. Like, you respond to us, we're the elected leaders. I thought that would be the main issue, where we see the bureaucracy brushing up against our elected officials, but it very well could be UFOs, UAPs. Why is Burchett not being given the highest level of security clearance to receive all of the information and documents that the Pentagon has.
Yeah, it's quite literally why we elect these people, is to be able to get access to this information and conduct investigations and hopefully give that information to the public. And that's just not happening here. And the government has a history, too, of denying FOIA requests related to this. And I'm sensitive to the fact that in some of these incidents, the government does have an interest in protecting certain technologies. They want to protect in the cases where perhaps foreign governments are involved. They don't want to give away the fact that maybe a foreign government has greater technology than the United States does. However, when you have independent journalists, like we had Michael Schellenberger on this program, talking about sources explaining that they had actually recovered UAP craft with potentially physical non-human remains inside, non-human pilots, we're at a point now where we have to err on the side of transparency, because the people deserve to know how much of this is real, if any, and what the government intends to do in terms of a protection, potentially, of the American people, if necessary, from these non-human things, I guess you could say.
Yeah, we have to err on the side of transparency, and the rest of this segment is redacted per request of the Pentagon. Just kidding. More rising after this.